Hey, good afternoon, everyone. There's like 4 people, and they're all right here. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, look, first day of a very busy Usmc. So, how many folks have already been out on the floor? It's good stuff out there, right? I'm going to try to look to the right and left. That's so the rest of the afternoon I don't spend chasing a purple spot that's right here, because those lights are hitting me right in the eyes. So, acquisition update from the Trasys perspective. Again, these are requirements we're working on, opportunities we're actively working. I have Lieutenant Colonel Harmon, who's the product manager for Range Training Systems. Miss Elizabeth Taggart, who's a product manager for Synthetic Training Systems, and Lieutenant Colonel Marshall Garcia, who's the PDM of Warfighter Training Support, which does a lot of our sustainment, a lot of our CLS activities. PM would be here, but since it's Sea Services co-leads this year, the Navy, Air Force, because they're who we're handing off, and the Marine Corps are all over the Hyatt practicing opening ceremonies for tomorrow morning. So they kind of coincided. So with that, we'll get started. When we get to Q&A, I think there's some cards. If not, I will call on you. But the really fun part about being the moderator is I get to decide if your question gets answered, or if we answer it somewhere else. So, but we'll try to answer everything. If we don't know, we'll say we don't know, and we'll move on. So with that, turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Harmon.
All right, could you go to the next, advance one slide? Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Rory Harmon. I'm the product manager for Range Training Systems here at PM Training Systems. And my portfolio is basically everything that you would think of as traditional Marine Corps training. It's live exercise force, live Marines on a real physical range shooting real live bullets at each other, or in the case of force on force, blank rounds with lasers that are actually causing effects on target in real time. So it's a chance for Marines to test their actual skills that they've developed, their hard skills, in a realistic setting prior to deployment and going forward. With that, next slide. I'm split into two general sides. I have two teams. I have Force on Force Training Systems next, and Range Training System, and the ranges side. Of those two, Force on Force Training Systems next is split into 3 increments, and those cover the Marine Corps Tactical Instrumentation System, or MCTIS. MCTIS is a laser-based tactical engagement adjudication system. So what does that mean? It means that if I shoot at you and you shoot at me and we're using blanks, instead of having somebody come by and say that, I shot first, so therefore you're dead or you're wounded, the system does that for us. It uses a laser to say that you got hit, and it randomizes the data to a certain extent. You got hit in the leg, whatever. But the system is much more advanced than that. So that was what you're probably familiar with is the old ITES system, which really was laser tag for Marines. This is significantly more advanced than that. I can tell if the Marine is standing up, lying down, running, walking, being carried by an aircraft. It also instruments buildings. We've instrumented, I think, up to 28 buildings in 29 palms, 300 basic vehicles like JLTVs, and so the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle and the Medium Tactical Vehicle Replacement, the vehicles that Marines use day in and day out to get from point A to point B on the battlefield. So it gives us the ability to really look at not just how Marines fight in a tactical engagement, but also how they move logistically in a tactical environment from point to point. The system right now is just got through its initial fielding. We've hit our initial operating capability. We are working to procure more towards our full operating capability, and that's on a production contract with Saab out of Saab Incorporated here in America, part with Saab Sweden. And that is going to be going forward. We're working with them on sustainment. So they are the prime vendor for, for the foreseeable future. So if you're interested in this area, they're going to be a player that you're going to be dealing with and working with in the future. So increment 1 is focused, as I said, on the personnel and on the main vehicle types, and then on the C2 systems that allow the information to pass around the battlefield. So we have mobile network nodes and C2 antennas that go up, so that way you can take information that's being adjudicated at the very edge of the exercise all the way back to the core where it's being collected, adjudicated, and you can actually track how every single engagement went for really the indefinite amount of time. We haven't hit the upper limit yet, so you can actually go through and see how a Marine improves from day 1 when he shot his buddy because he was flagging him to the end of the exercise when he's the one with the longest shot and he's keeping the enemy suppressed while his squad is moving into position. So you can really see that advancement of the Marines' tactics throughout. So that's increment 1. If you can go to the next slide. Increment 2 is our combat vehicles. We're focused on the amphibious combat vehicle and the light armored vehicle and the variants thereof. That one is currently in development. Again, we're using it with Saab Inc. We're using an other transaction authority to get after these two things that are already integrated with already developed by them and just integrating them onto the platform. We should see those coming online and begin initial fielding next year. And that will cover the main vehicle types that we're looking at. Next slide. I think the thing that probably the most interest to this audience is our increment 3, which is weapons surrogates. So, as I mentioned, we focused on kind of the generic Marine Corps capabilities. We're trying to hit the largest part of the MAGTF we can. So, your weapons that have been instrumented are your M4s, M16s, the 240, the M2 machine gun, the things that everybody has. Whereas in the squad automatic weapon. In the future, we want to be able to instrument all of the support weaponry that goes into a Marine Corps weapons unit. So looking at the AT-4, mortars, grenades, Mark 19, just all the things that fill out and complement the Marine Corps capabilities. That's one of the biggest feedback points we've been getting from the training audiences so far, is just that it's somewhat jarring when you're running and gunning and you're fully immersed in the exercise, and then you pull out your javelin to take out the vehicle that's coming down the lane, and you have to stop, and the guy, the coyote comes over, and he says, okay, tell me how you're aiming. Okay, yeah, that sounds good enough, you hit. This will actually enable somebody to target the vehicle with their javelin or with their tow and have it adjudicate through the system. Mortar, same kind of capability. You can have a Marine Corps mortar team carry the mortars out onto the battlefield. They actually have to emplace. And not only will they be able to affect somebody who's over the horizon, but they can be affected in return. So it's a fully instrumenting the exercise force and the MAGTF. And the reason I say this is of the most interest is because this is where we're trying to compete these individual weapons types so that we have an opportunity for small businesses and for other vendors to get in and provide us the latest capability possible, the most technologically advanced. So we're really looking at whatever somebody has that's out there. We'll be investigating these different types. You may have recently seen a request for information that was out to industry. We were trying to see what's out there, what's in the state of the art. You will very likely see other RFIs and RFPs coming out within the next year so that we can continue to advance this and beginning fielding of some of these capabilities based on what is the most mature in the FY27 timeframe. Next slide. The tactical video capture system is something that's placed into our established training sites for urban operations across the Marine Corps, everywhere from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, all the way to the immersive training village in Guam was our latest installation. And this basically gives you 360-degree view of the exercise force with a high-fidelity video feed. Right now, it's specifically for your immersive infantry trainers, both indoor and outdoor, so they can provide that after-action capability. This is you going around the corner. This is how you spoke with the villagers, et cetera. We're looking to connect that with the force-on-force capability. It's part of the force-on-force team, so that not only do you have the graphical representation of the people as they move around the battle space through the force-on-force system, but now I can actually say, hey, pull up the video from that engagement, and I can show them, because sometimes, nobody would ever argue that, no, I actually didn't pop up and shoot my buddy, but I can show you, no, you actually did. This is you moving around the corner, you didn't look both ways, and you shot the wrong guy. Obviously, we just finished fielding to Guam, as I said. That got through our first iteration. We are looking to go back out and begin refreshing, so there will be opportunities for us to reach out to industry for the various technical refreshes across the Marine Corps as we hit those points. Next slide. Electronic Warfare Ground Instrumented Ranges, or EWGIR, is our attempt to figure out how to train Marines in a comm-denied environment. Most of your EW training capabilities have focused on the attacker up to this point. So really looking at, how do we make sure that our guys who do EW know they're having effects on the enemy, kind of like an EW version of force on force. In this case, we actually want the reverse side. We've been asked by Combat Development and Integration to figure out how from a infantry squad to a dismounted infantry squad to a mounted infantry battalion to say, how do they recognize when they are being jammed, spoofed, attacked, and exploited, and how do they mitigate that? How can they operate within the electromagnetic spectrum to maintain information superiority and combat effectiveness? And we're looking at a variety of solutions. Right now, we're partnering with the Threat Systems Management Office from Redstone Arsenal, looking at the capabilities they've investigated up to this point, but we're not looking for any specific type right now. We are open to any solution that may be out there, and we are looking at a variety of approaches, both from the training as a service model, where you can show up and train the unit, and then you come in with your equipment, you leave with your equipment, and then also moving towards some procured capabilities so that Marines can train on their own schedule without necessarily having to coordinate it through us. So there will be a variety of requests out to industry to support these coming exercises over the next year. I know in FY25 we've already looked at a couple. We're looking to instrument more exercises and get as much feedback as possible, and then also partnering with some of the synthetic training side so that these effects can be managed both from the synthetic side and then have effects on the real world. So we're looking at it from every angle possible. Next. The combat training environment, these are the immersive infantry trainers that I mentioned earlier, plus other military operations and urban terrain environments that are sprinkled throughout every base, post, and station in the Marine Corps. Right now, there are a lot of Connex boxes, your general equipment trailers that have been modified to represent buildings. Right now, we're looking at a refresh beginning in probably about 2 years, where we're doing business case analysis for what the appropriate replacement would be for the variety of environments that we operate where Marines are stationed, and then getting that out, like I said, probably in the 27 time frame of having a capability that's going to last a little bit longer. Right now, we're seeing a lot of corrosion because of these are untreated. So if you have capabilities that exist within whether they're precast concrete, moving containers that are high resilience to environmental factors, we'd certainly be interested in hearing about the capabilities you have and your ability to create a non-permanent village-like capability. And I say non-permanent because it has to be a certain amount of mobile, otherwise it becomes real property, and that becomes a different type of acquisition than we handle here. So all of these are something we can move if needed to, or dispose of on a relatively expedient basis. Next. And the immersive infantry trainer, these are physically installed. These are permanent structures on the bases, and these are fully instrumented villages. They have atmospherics, so we were able to bring in role players to simulate various types of various countries and environments. And it looks and operates like a real live village, because in some cases, particularly in Guam, it at one point was an actual housing area. But the capabilities we need from industry in these areas are, like I said, atmospherics. Everything from the magazines that simulate a marine's birthing area, plates, representative foods, smell generators, sound generators, things that we can make, we can place in these areas and refresh on a regular basis, so that the Marines can have the most immersive environment possible before they deploy, and they can actually know kind of the sights and sounds they're going to face. We simulate everything from the scent of a torture chamber to a marketplace with various foods being baked, coffee shops, etc. So Marines know exactly what they're going to smell, hear, and experience before they go out the door. Next. The range training aids portfolio, this is probably the broadest that I have. It's on the ranges team that I mentioned before. And RTAP covers everything, all of your targetry, all of your range upgrades, management software. It's basically everything you need to run a live fire range in the Marine Corps. We've partnered with a variety of vendors. We're constantly refreshing every year. There's various opportunities for us to partner with industry, for new targets, new management software. So if you have anything in the physical realm, whether it's just a responsive target, something more reliable, something that operates in a more austere condition, we'd love to hear about it, because things that can last longer and provides Marines more training is always a benefit to us, because it saves us money down the road. Next. Live fire training systems is specifically focused on the 3MEF area of operations. It's ranges in Guam, one ranges in Hawaii, and Camp Pendleton, California. And those are mostly pretty much all fielded. The last one is going to be coming online in FY25, and it is the multipurpose machine gun range. Again, the initial fielding for most of the ranges is done, and we'll be fielding the last one this year. However, within a few years, especially given the environment that it's in, highly corrosive, salt water, salt air, I imagine there will be opportunities to work with us on refreshes and upgrades in the future. Trackless mobile infantry target. This is a capability that basically allows Marines to shoot live rounds on a dynamic thinking enemy. It is it looks like a person from the waist, from the ground up, except it runs on wheels. And when it's trackless, it doesn't mean that it's not a tracked system. It means that it doesn't run on a rail system back and forth. It dynamically moves. And these can be programmed to respond to with various personalities, various languages, and these will actually continue to move until they are struck with in a lethal area. And if they're not, they can be wounded, change their movement rates, movement dynamics. And that's a contract we currently have out, and we just awarded again. So it's another probably, I believe, 5 years before this will be coming up for another competition. So if you have capabilities, that's kind of the timeline we're looking at. Next slide. And the known distance automated scoring system is something it's a capability we're looking at to get after automating the known distance range. Your annual rifle qualification, in terms of how it's operated, has not changed since 1920. Or whenever the last time we modernized our weapons to shoot at these distances. The target lifter is the same. It's a manual target lifter. You still have Marines in the pits, lifting, raising, lowering, scoring the target. This is an opportunity to get Marines out of the pits, run more Marines through annual rifle qualification every single year, which gives them more opportunities to train and actually become proficient at their weapons, as opposed to just testing them once a year and seeing if they've retained what they got at boot camp. We're currently working with an OTA through the Army's TREX consortium. looking at a couple capabilities and seeing how they can move forward. However, we are looking at, are open to other solutions that are out there, just looking for, again, future refreshes and anything that can allow us to instrument and these ranges, score automatically, and provide the Marines a readout of how they did without having to have somebody in the target manually posting spindles through the paper. Next slide. And then this is kind of just, again, a graphical representation of our current contracts and efforts over time, and when we believe these will be either competed or recompeted. The largest, the best opportunities that we have right now are in the force-on-force weapon surrogates and the EW solutions to any kind of capability that can produce electronic warfare effects on the exercise force. We are looking for those, what's state-of-the-art and capability time now. So if you have anything like that, we'd love to hear. Come visit your booth and see what you have to offer.
All right, so he's going to be followed by Elizabeth, but something I forgot to say at the beginning, I'm going to ask you to hold all your questions to the end. That way they can all get their chance to lay out their programs and plans, and then we'll take them after that. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Elizabeth Tiger. I'm the product manager for Synthetic Training Systems. I have the collective and virtual training simulators and simulations. Right now, we currently have 12 programs of record assigned to PM Trasys, and they range from individual Marine training to staff training, our live virtual constructive training environment, which is in a state of transition right now, as well as our vehicle trainers, gunnery training systems, convoy trainers, driver trainers, and marksmanship capability. And then we also recently added the egress training capability to the STS portfolio. So starting with the first slide, we have the combat vehicle training systems. We recently completed a tech refresh last year. The item exit date that we were planning to sustain this program through was 2030, and recently that got updated to 2035. So we are anticipating a future tech refresh in the Q2 FY27 timeframe. We are disposing of the tabletop gunnery training systems and also our AAV turret trainers. We are anticipating supporting Guam pending some of our requirement updates. So as a result, for our tech refresh, we do anticipate sending out an RFI in the near future. We are looking at opportunities as we field the system in Guam to also refresh the capabilities to last till 35, excuse me. Some of our limitations are obviously funding, so we are looking at some rapid sustainment initiatives and other funding opportunities to try to work on one of the gaps we have with our deployability of our targets trainer, in which why we removed it from our AAO, and also looking at some handheld capabilities and updating the software baseline. We're also looking at a ground vehicle consolidation effort. We're going to look at CVTS, CCS, and ODS for one reconfigurable trainer capability with some graphic enhancements. So we anticipate getting an RFI out there to get as much information as we can to help make decisions to evolve the program. Next program is the Combat Convoy Simulator. We also recently just finished an upgrade with our Windows and our weapons concurrency. As of last week, the item exit date for this one was also updated to 2035. So we do have a new tech refresh that we're planning in the future for this. Just like the combat vehicle training systems, we do anticipate sending out an RFI. We are working with our requirement sponsor now for a potential requirements update after we get some market research on the platforms to update the legacy system and also some other initiatives that we can do besides having the 360-degree projectors. So we anticipate getting an RFI out in the future for that. The next program we have is the Operator Driver Simulator. You're going to hear a common theme here. Our item exit date was just updated to 2035. We did terminate our Marine Common Driver Trainer program and we are now extending the life of the operator-driver simulator. The last requirements document we have was from 2010, so we do have a lot of legacy platforms being supported, impacting our usage rates for the systems. So we have been doing extensive market research, and we are looking at what tech refresh capabilities we can do as early as 26 if we are able to obtain funding. And one of those COAs of the multiple ones that we have is to completely refresh the system, which could be a launching point for future changes in requirements for new vehicle platforms, terrain databases, and other improvements as well. So I don't anticipate an RFI coming out at this time, but we are awaiting a decision to move forward with the program. Next slide is the indoor simulated marksmanship training. So we've had a lot of activity going on supporting this portfolio. We actually awarded an OTA 2 years ago here at Usmc on the spot to support the Javelin prototype. We successfully completed a basic capability and are looking at potentially pursuing that further in the future. We are also working with our training sponsors to help support and identify any gaps in training to align with the marksmanship campaign plan, and more to follow on some of the updates that might be coming in the future. We did just complete a weapons concurrency, fielding the mortars and MAWs. In the past, there's been a study on linking the live training to blast over pressure, which can cause traumatic brain injury. And then recently, there was another memo published to support opportunities to kind of manage this. And one of those includes simulations. And because of our weapons concurrency that we have been continuing to lean forward on, we do have 6 of those weapons that we can support utilizing the Usmc system. We also did just field an Usmc in Guam, so we're extending our capabilities there. Moving on to the variant of Usmc is the Advanced Small Arms Lethality Trainer. This is a successful training as a service acquisition that we have executed. We have 3 systems that we fielded last year, and pending availability of funds and facilities, projecting up to 3 more. So this is a great capability that we've been able to support, but just to be transparent, there are concerns with the affordability. We are doing some work with the Naval Health Research Center to try to get some data-driven information to help support any future material solutions for the programs. We have the family of egress trainers. This recently moved over to the synthetic training systems portfolio. This includes the dry and underwater egress trainers. All of these, with the exception of the MUIT, is in sustainment, so I'll leave that to Lieutenant Colonel Garcia to provide the updates on those sustainment opportunities. The next is the MUIT, our multi-use egress trainer. Right now, this is in the process of getting a milestone C decision for us to be able to go into production. It is a sole source opportunity with the Navy contract, but it will be a one-for-one replacement of the submerged vehicle egress trainer, and it'll replicate the ACV, JLTV, and LAV. So lastly, we're going into the roadmap. So although we don't have necessarily a lot of opportunities this fiscal year, I do anticipate that that can change in the future. So we are asking for the RFIs that we put out to get maximum feedback possible. Even if you can't answer all the questions that we have in there, you can answer one question. That information is going to be extremely helpful for us to make decisions as we move forward with our plans to sustain these systems till 2035. As you can see up here, there's also an addition of multiple programs that were not in the quad charts that I presented. This is the LVCTE portfolio of systems that's currently in transition. So I just wanted to give a quick update of where we are from a PM Trasys perspective. The MTWAS program, we were doing the key improvements and re-engineering effort. That was terminated, and there is a letter of suspension for FY26 for the MTWAS program for PM Trasys. SAVT received a letter of termination to end the program this fiscal year, and Lieutenant Colonel Garcia will have additional information on disposition activities. DBTE program is in sustainment and is going to be replaced by the Marine Common Virtual Platform. That is one active program that we are working getting designated within synthetic training systems. And this is based off 3 recent requirement changes to have a common platform for different applications for virtual and constructive simulations. We are looking at that training as a service initiative and some opportunities that we have. We just released an RFI a few hours ago, so I have that information, but we have 7 questions that we're looking for industry on starting a small-scale training as a service initiative for this capability. So if anyone has their pens handy, it is M67854-25-R-8014. We just released this a few hours ago, and it will close on the 12th of December. Any information that we can get to help get us an understanding as we establish this program of record will be extremely beneficial. And lastly, the LVCTE program was a software acquisition program, and as of recent, the designation is changing, so more to follow. And the Marine Air Command and Control System that I've briefed in the past at Paul is still a validated requirement, but it remains on hold, and we are not pursuing any further actions at this time. So that completes the synthetic training systems portfolio, and I'll hold for questions after. I'll give you the number again. All right, M67854-25-R-8014. All right.
We can give you that again at the end, in case you didn't get it. All right, next up is Lieutenant Colonel Marshall Garcia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me in the back? All right, great. Hey, really quick show of hands. How many of the attendees here today participate in our Team Orlando PALT sessions? Quick show of hands. Okay, so about 30 to 40, maybe 50%. Great. Hey, good to see you all again. For those who don't, we meet monthly at the Team Orlando Tech Grove, where we go over some similar information to this. So if you ever have a question or if you're looking for more engagement, ITSEC is not the only time. That's also a really good time to come out and socialize with us and our team. Next slide, please. Thanks. A little bit about WTS. So WTS and really PM Trasys in general is a little bit of a different program office. So you just heard my 2 colleagues speak about the wonderful things that we're doing and how much we're looking forward and trying to get after new technologies. Interesting part of the training portfolio, as many of you know, is it turns over very quickly. So if they spend all of their time looking backwards at sustainment, how much bandwidth do they and their teams have to actually look forward? Not very much, right? And so WTS has evolved over the years. Many of you may have known it as TS4 previously. It was an acronym that's a little bit difficult to remember, so I'm not going to get into it. But the bottom line is WTS is all about supporting the warfighter training wherever it is, whoever needs it, regardless of the organization, although I principally exist to enable PM Trasys activities and to support the activities of my colleagues to my right. I also am here to support whatever the needs of TCOM or the fleet are. We'll talk a little bit about what those needs are and how we do it. My purpose statement is listed above. I'm sure you can read it as we're speaking, or if you have any questions later, happy to address it. The bottom line, though, is that I am an enabler. My job is to focus principally on things that have been fielded and to make sure that we have the vehicles, in terms of contract vehicles, researched and prepared, and to make sure that we sustain the items that are fielded once that's conducted. Finally, we also interact a lot with the customer. It's a very important activity that we spend a lot of time on. I am the product manager who's responsible for all of our forward position personnel for PM Trasys all across the globe. This includes 7 different locations and 5 different time zones, and any of the reserve support requirements that in between. So it's truly a global portfolio. And as a result, we have a team that is broken out into regional components, which I'll get into in a minute. And those regions are really designed to provide unique support to each of those regions, which we'll talk about. And finally, I focus principally on O&M funding. However, as required, we can support PMC. Next slide, please. This is an overview of how I distribute labor. You may see many of my employees out here walking the floor. In the back of the room, I have one of my regional support group leads, Mr. Adam Emanuel. Put your hand up. So if you have any questions about regional activities or support, Adam is my go-to person for that. He's in charge of the things that you see on the left side of the screen. Ground Training System Support, or GTSS. These are 3 different regional contracts that are broken up to support a variety of maintenance and support needs at all the different regions where Marines train across the globe. Obviously working in close partnership with Training Education Command personnel. Then we have GRISP and RTSP. The acronyms are listed up there. These are also range maintenance and sustainment programs designed to keep our Marines training in good and well-maintained and good facilities. Again, those are broken up regionally as well. You might appreciate this. So show of hands, how many people in this room think that the same training aids that the Marines need in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, match those of 29 Palms, California? Quick show of hands, who agrees? No one. That's great, you're on it. This is exactly why I have this portfolio broken up the way that we do, because there's very unique training needs, and not just needs, but also customers. The MAGTAFs think differently overseas than they do in CONUS. The 1MEF in CONUS out in California thinks differently than the 2MEF out in North Carolina and on the East Coast. And as a result, we have relationship management concerns, we have communications management concerns, and then we also have the material solutions and the vendors who can support maybe regional within CONUS, but maybe they are not interested in a Guam problem, right? And so those are some of the complexities. FY24, we did $118 million of support, 73 contract actions. We have the absolute best contracting team on the face of the earth. I would put them against anyone. And they missed 0 awards. So when it comes to paying our bills, we're really, really good at that, and I'm proud of that. We also have some other RTAM support contracts. I'm not going to get into the weeds of what they all are, but you could see those on the lower left-hand side of the screen. The bottom line, Training Education Command is a primary stakeholder, someone that we are dedicated to supporting, obviously as Marine Corps Systems Command training systems. So we try to maintain very close support for them and those contracts, many of which are knowledge-based services and support. On the opposite side of the portfolio, Mr. Tim Berglund, he's holding down the rear at this point, answering emails and doing all that stuff back at the headquarters. But he handles oversight of many of our centrally managed actions. And so equipment-related services, also very commonly known as CLS type support. Then we also have electronics support or PDSS type support. And then the MAGTAF training system support or knowledge-based services support. While many of these directly support my colleagues to my right, we have an organization that manages those, as well as some legacy multiple award contract vehicles that we use to get these services and support out there, in addition to things like Seaport and other contract vehicles that we've been investigating with other services. Elizabeth mentioned underwater egress training. Mr. Berglund manages that for us. And that's in our first option year of a 5-year award, so that we have some time before that one comes back up. Role player support is another one. So when it comes to giving Marines a very realistic training opportunity inside of Lieutenant Colonel Herman's IIT or Infantry Immersion Trainer, and on the many ranges all across the Marine Corps, all across the globe, we have role players who come and provide adversarial support and other support to Marines to give them the most realistic training possible. We also handle that. That's 6 task orders a year which is great, but it's also a very heavy burden when it comes to contracting. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit of an overview of what Mr. Emanuel covers down on in terms of personnel and support. Very similar to the last slide, but you can see he's got quite a bit of structure. And what I wanted to call out here is you'll notice that they're arranged administratively into teams, 1 MEF, 2 MEF, and 3 MEF, or OCONUS. And then in addition to that, we have Mr. Mike McMillan, who covers down on all of our range support. Mike, would you mind putting your hand up in the back there? Mike's here if you guys have any questions about some of those other range support contracts that we mentioned. All right, so just wanted to provide a little bit of an overview of how we're regionally distributed there. GTSS, this slide provides an overview of what GTSS is. It's essentially regional CLS. I talked about it a little bit earlier, and it's really unique. Each region has their own. We work cooperatively with Marine Corps Systems Command contracting personnel and also NOC-TSD contracting support to cover down on this, just because there's a large volume of contracting activity that we have managed. But at the end of the day, this is what is providing support to California, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Hawaii, Japan, Guam, and obviously there's always the mod, the potential mod for future support. Next slide, please. GRISP and RTSP, this is highlighting the maintenance programs and the revitalization programs that we spoke about briefly earlier. Interesting about the GRISP and RTSP, historically, these programs were under Lieutenant Colonel Herman's portfolio. And we've transitioned about 80% of those programs to my portfolio so that we can free up his team to focus on emerging requirements. As you saw, he's very busy looking forward, right? So this is just a way that we work cooperatively together to manage the maintenance of the training across the globe. We are 3 individual portfolios, but we have a common mission. Next slide, please. RTAM MilOps. This is one of the range support programs that that I mentioned earlier. This one is interesting. It provides all different types of support for range management, range maintenance, and range safety. The details are listed in the box in the upper right, and I know that these slides will be made available to you all. So I'll just leave it up there for a couple seconds, and then we'll move on. The next slide discusses RCF, or Range Control Facility Support. This also provides support to range management and range control. So we are essentially the vehicle by which this contract is implemented, but this is really directly supporting our Training Education Command folks. So that's RCF. Next is RMTK. This is an interesting program. This program is a toolkit provided to different stakeholders, principally Marine Corps installations, but we also do international business as well. And this, it provides a digital tool that leverages GIS software as well as other range safety software to ensure that we are building accurate ranges and accurate safety into the ranges that we build. And again, this is led by Training Education Command, supported by PM Trasys. The TSC contract is the Training Support Center contract. We are currently in the process of building out the recompete for this. This is the contract which provides knowledge-based service support to all the MEFs that are planning large exercises. As you might understand, they're pretty difficult to plan these very large exercises. This program has evolved over the years, is continuing to evolve as Project Tripoli unfolds and live virtual constructive training kind of takes shape. So through the recompete, we've really been working hand in hand with Training Education Command to try and find the best possible solution for what they're looking for while we're getting ready to recompete this in the next fiscal year. Next. So that's all under the regional portfolio, which is Mr. Emanuel. The next portfolio that I'll address is our centrally managed portfolio, which is Mr. Berglund. Again, he's not here, but we can get you in touch with him if you'd like. You can see he has far fewer people, and he has more programs. We do this because we achieve great efficiencies when we're centrally managing some of these sustainment portfolios. Additionally, the project officers that we have assigned to this essentially act as assistant project officers to my colleagues on the right. So if their bandwidth is getting in high demand, ISMIT is a really good example. There's been a lot of things going on with the marksmanship trainer, with the indoor marksmanship trainer. We have a person who's focused on the sustainment aspect of that, so that her ISMIT project officer could run out and do great things, extremely busy, constantly traveling. And so Elizabeth and I work together on ISMIT, just as an example. Next slide, please. ERSS is a multiple award contract, which Trasys historically utilized to focus on the CLS. We had this so that we could try and generate a local pool of vendors who are very familiar with our needs. We haven't been getting the level of competition that we desire, so we're actually looking at Seaport for many of our future CLS needs. So if you have any needs, Seaport and other contracts such as RS3 or CHS6 could be good alternatives that we've been investigating as well. But ERSS is still a multiple award contract that we're using for certain things. We're just casting a wide net through Seaport so that we can try and generate a little bit more competition and diversity of opportunity. The same thing applies to ECS. Next slide. ECS is our PDSS, principally PDSS, but software development as well. Multiple award contract. This is a homegrown contract created by Trasys. And in a similar manner, we do a lot of really good work on this, but a lot of our work is being directed to ECS, and then you'll see RFIs out on SAM.gov as well for some similar reasons. So this is for really software sustainment and support. Next is MTSS, or MAGTF Training System Support. The bottom line is that this multiple award contract was hyper-utilized, and we actually ended up reaching its ceiling for planned execution about 3 years earlier than planned. So we're investigating other knowledge-based services contract like those that I previously mentioned. And in the meantime, we plan to use Seaport to support these. So please, if you're interested in knowledge-based services or other support, please reach out and have your contracting folks investigate Seaport further if they're not already aware. Finally, I want to wrap up with just a few knowledge-based service contracts that we're working cooperatively with my colleagues on the right. Lieutenant Colonel Herman mentioned the robotic drone, the robotic targets that move around and provide really great opportunity for Marines to interact with the dynamic battlefield. That is one of the contracts that support his portfolio directly. However, they were run on one of our knowledge-based services contracts. Again, another example of how we work together. Next slide is ASALT. Elizabeth mentioned that ASALT was a great way of getting advanced training, specifically training as a service out. PM Trasys has been doing training as a service for a long time. It's not new. This is a good example of a way that we supported training as a service as well. One of the unique things about this one is, hey, demand is high, everything's looking good, we're kind of getting great feedback from the Marines, but in the future, we may need to go in a different direction, right? So we'll have to see how that shakes out over due course of time. Finally, when it comes to the UIT, or the underwater egress trainer, quick show of hands, how many people have ever been in an underwater egress trainer? Okay, a few. That's actually a lot more than I thought. Now, next show of hands, how many people have ever heard about the underwater egress trainer before today? Okay, a little bit more. And then, I'm not going to ask this, but for those who've never heard of it before, we flip Marines over inside of a pool in a mock-up fuselage of an aircraft so that we could train them to get out. And then after they pass that, there's a training curriculum, of course, that gets them there. Then after we pass that, we put a blindfold and equipment on and make them do it again, right? So it's kind of funny. Whenever I explain this to my family, they think that we're absolutely crazy. But it's not that we're crazy. We're really committed to taking care of Marines. And so the underwater egress trainer is a high-risk training evolution that happens around the world. And there's a pretty constant flow of folks who get put in the quote-unquote dunker. And so Ms. Tigert mentioned that there is a plan to further upgrade this and to develop more. That's the MUIT program. The UIP program is currently our program of record, and it's already fielded, and we are actively sustaining this. Next slide. This is just a deeper dive on role players. We already talked thoroughly about the role player support. So if anyone needs any more information on role players, you can feel free to see me after this. And the following slides are just our PALT slides. Some slides similar to this are presented basically monthly at the Tech Grove. I just want to highlight the fact that we actually do think about our acquisitions long term. We're looking and we're constantly investigating, not just really appealing solutions for technology, but also for sustainment. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is more sustainment that we're looking at for all the same programs that we've mentioned. And then next slide, please. Finally, this is more. So when it comes to sustainment, it's really important to understand that we are actively thinking about the sustainment of these training technologies. We're not just throwing things out there hoping that they're successful. Marine Corps Systems Command is dedicated to sustainable, effective training solutions, and all three of us have a part in it. So thank you very much.
Hey, can we kill those lights and turn the overheads? Is that a no? All right, so we have about 25 minutes. So who's got questions? Come on, we weren't that good.
So EGMTS, the Enterprise Ground Maintenance Trainer, that never came to fruition of a validated requirement. We were leaning forward on some COAs to support, but as soon as that requirement's validated, if it's validated, then that's something that we would support in PM Trasys if assigned. But there's no action at this time.
All right, we're going to start asking you questions.
We have one to the right, JT.
Or we're going to assign homework. Yes, sir. That is not in our portfolio. But,
Can we clarify the question? We couldn't hear it.
can you say it again, please?
An update on the 53 kilo CMI training system.
Yeah.
Been mentioned in prior reports, but it wasn't mentioned in the last report.
Yeah, but was that the Navy Bolt? Because it wasn't mentioned by us,
We do have
by PM Trasys.
we do have a resident aviator in the back who you can connect with, Major Chris Willis. He's right back there if you'd like to connect with him afterwards.
You want to answer the question?
Not right now. I can put in touch with IPT before next. I don't have cognizance of that.
Cool.
Next. Sir.
Hey, Ken Good from Joint Staff. Thanks for your brief today. It's very informative. I'm your Joint Training Resource Sponsor. I'm just curious up front, what do you think are your top one or two joint training gaps for you to be able to train to joint missions with the other services? What capabilities are you working on? I did see some as far as, it looked like out in 29 where you're waiting for some common architecture to develop some capabilities. What are you doing there? And what are your top two training gaps at least? And then I've got a follow-up question.
So I would say that tune in tomorrow. Lieutenant General Watson, who's the new CG of Training Education Command, he's more equipped to talk about what the Marine Corps' training gaps are. And Joe, you guys can back me up on this. That's a good question for him. And I think 2, if not 3 panels he's going to be on.
Follow-up question. So I didn't see anything as far as combat UAVs or counter UAV training capabilities. Is there anything in the pipeline there?
I don't think so.
Not that I'm-
No, I don't have a.
You want to go there? Yeah, okay. We're not there yet. Not for training. Who else? All right. So,
Sorry. Chicken Turner, and so I'm like Farm Aviation. This question is actually for Mr. Tiger. On your STS slide, you had maps stated there's a valid requirement, but there's not pursuing. Do you have any additional information in our
So as of right now, we were assigned the Marine Air Command and Control simulation system to start pursuing it, and we were unable to continue moving forward with it due to some constraints, so we're awaiting some additional guidance. But right now, not actively working it, but always interested in market research.
No, go ahead.
Force on Force specifically, has there any been discussions on integrating the air side of the NACDAF constructive simulation? Are you working with those sensors for McKiss where they can actually use, constructive simulation aircraft and hit the sensors and things like that? Is that part of the portfolio at all?
We anticipate that becoming a part of the Thank you. We anticipate that becoming a part of the portfolio. We foresee an air-to-ground, ground-to-air requirement, probably hitting the deck within the next year, 2 years. So we're looking at what industry has to offer, doing our market research, but I have not received that requirement yet, so I can't tell you what the specifics will be for how we think that's going to be implemented or how we want to implement that in the Marine Corps. But we are, like I said, we are looking at that. We know there are some technologies out there that kind of get after that, and we're looking at how we can get ahead of the requirement when it comes in, but I don't have the details yet of how exactly we want that to look, especially when you integrate the simulated side as well. I mean, right now, I focus pretty much primarily on the real world assets, and anybody who's tried to add a sensor or emitter to an air platform, it's not an easy process. No problem.
All right, so when we say we're done, I got you. You don't get to come running up here asking questions. So we're going to use the time. Let me add him first, and I'll come back to you, David.
Looking at the various portfolio programs that you have running, it appears that there's an opportunity to link data coming out of a lot of these systems, but I don't see a program that are data that. So looking from the UK perspective, we have a training measurement and evaluation stream within our collective training transformation program that is looking to exploit the data coming out of different systems so we can optimize the training progression. Is that something that we're very well looking at?
So again, it's one of those areas where I think we've identified the same thing, that it would make a lot of sense to gather the training data, whether it's from an ISMIT, ASALT, Marine Corps live fire training range, and track that down to the individual level, their progression throughout. It's something I know that we've had discussions with our requirement sponsor, Marine Training Programs Division, getting after that kind of capability. But again, it's still in the infancy, so I can't say which pieces of data we're trying to track or what we consider the most relevant data. But if you have something so that I can kind of supply them, hey, this is what a solution could look like or what it could do for us, then I'd love to take that to them and kind of offer that solution to spur some innovation.
Slide 4, the LAB ACP training kind of just breezed past that. It might have been intentional, but was there anything additional you could add to that?
Are you talking about for the Force on Force system?
Was the LAB like driver trainer or anything?
Oh.
So that would have been in the synthetic training portfolio. So the LAV driver trainer is right now lumped up with our operator driver simulator. That was intended because when we had our Marine Common Driver Trainer, that capability was going to be incorporated into that program of record. Now that we have terminated that requirement, we are going to separately pull out the LAV driver trainer. We are having some obsolescence issues, some facility concerns, so that as we do the refresh with the driver simulator, if that item exit date is also extended to the 2030, 2035 timeframe, then that will be something that we would consider for a tech refresh as well.
Sir.
Bill Cox, Ravenswood Solutions. So with the KDAS current OTA, I know there's been discussion about adjustments being made due to the changes that are coming out with the ARQ and possibly adding movers. Is that going to be another OTA, or because I know that's part of the current OTA?
So in terms of the requirement, again, I have my team stick pretty pretty diligently to what we received from our requirement sponsor. I know that obviously there is talk about that, but I haven't received anything formal. So that my guidance to them has and will remain, you know, we know what we need to go after, the way the OTA is currently structured, and the requirements as written, go after that, pursue it to the best of your ability, and if that needs to come in, and we'll talk to the contracting officer about what the strategy is, because I can't say if they would agree to just modding the OTA or want another OTA. So again, I'm going to stick with what we have as we have it and make the best of it from there.
All right, so when I used to work at DAU about 5 years ago, teaching classes, I would say we have reached the point of what we call the stare of understanding, where there's no questions either way. We're just looking at each other. So we still have time. If you guys will stick around, entertain a few more, but appreciate your support, appreciate your participation.